Service Commission to order at 4 o'clock on July 26th. First item, the approval of the May 15th minutes. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
And I'll second it. Bunch of personnel transactions.
All right, so workforce demographics data collection. This is something that the state has been doing for years. They distribute a sheet with bubbles for people to color in at tests, and they can opt out from participating in the survey. Basically, they've added new bubbles for gender, which is wonderful that the state is being more inclusive in their data collecting. And we rolled that out for the first time with the police exam, which was given the firefighter promotional exam, which was given last month. Summary of annual reports. I sent this over a while back. The one question I had from the commission about it was how we stand with our provisional rate. Our provisional rate is slightly above average when looked at across the state, but if you look at agencies that share our job market, so I'm thinking Delaware, Otsego, Shenango, Schoharie counties, we are in line or better than them. And there is one of those agencies, I won't call them out, that is at 30% provisional rate. So,
All right.
Caseworker T&E exam, this is something that went out to all agencies. We don't have caseworkers per se. They have changed that format. We actually did get a call today from the Housing Authority that they may be in the need of a test for a tenant relations assistant, and I am going to see if this caseworker T&E exam will be appropriate to hold that test should they request it. Exam numbers, we've had this ongoing thing for a long time with the state where they keep running out of numbers. They found some new numbers, so they are starting to use numbers that begin with 8 for local tests rather than only using numbers that begin with 6s and 7s. So that's wonderful news. Hi there. Changes to Section 57 of Civil Service Law. We received a PAR regarding changes that went into effect. This is the section of civil service law that pertains to continuous recruitment examinations. A continuous recruitment examination is when an exam is continuously available for a candidate to take. So if a county has an entry-level job, like a keyboard specialist that they have tons of across their county, they can have it as continuous recruitment. People can come in, sign up for the exam, take it that day, and then they get interfiled on the existing list and they remain on it for 4 years. So the changes that were made for this is because of the conversation we had a month or two ago about how the state is going towards a computerized continuous recruitment system. So this law change was necessary for them to be looking forward to getting rid of paper and pencil exams for their exams. Section 50, we are going to talk about a little more under new business, but this is a law change that allowed Governor Hochul to eliminate exam fees for state exams for a period from July 1st, 2023 until December 31st, 2025. And then last but not least, we received an email from the Municipal Service Division regarding the police exams, telling us that it is the last day to sign up for the police exam, and that they are hearing that numbers across the state are abysmal, and that they were encouraging all agencies that have not already planned on participating in this exam to sign up. Because they're recognizing how bad police recruiting is. I've never gotten an email like that from the state before about position or a test. So I thought it was significant to include that here, that the state is recognizing that there is a significant recruitment issue when it comes to this police exam across the state. And even agencies that weren't planning on offering it this year, they're encouraging them to do so. questions on any of that? I know I moved through some of it.
That's good, thank you.
Did we supposed to approve the personnel transactions?
Oh, we missed the personnel transactions, I'm sorry.
Like Keith said, we have a bunch of them, and that was, we went
Yes.
on to correspondence.
I'm sorry, I thought we had a bunch of correspondence.
Thank you for, that was my memory, but
Okay.
I had forgotten. that.
Zeal to
Sorry.
get through everything.
All right, we have how many personnel transactions?
3 months worth.
And we adopt them all in one motion?
Yes.
So I will so move.
Second.
Thank you. Good catch.
Thank you. Okay.
Eligible list.
So Keith has the actual eligible list for you to sign. The, one, that I want to point out that is different than the rest, you will notice when you go through these that I have, I listed the expiration date on all of these lists to be the maximum, which is our usual procedure, with the exception of the Deputy Finance Director exam. With that one, I established a 1-year expiration date from today. And the reason I did that has to do with the existing job spec for that position and the fact that it's something that we very much would like to revisit in the near future. The rest of them, pretty standard.
So deputy finance for 1 year,
Yeah, and the rest of them.
everybody else maximum.
Yep.
All right. I'll move to, not adopt, to
Establish.
establish the eligibility list as listed on the agenda with the finance director, deputy finance director being a list for 1 year.
Second.
Well, that was easy enough. 2 of those only had 2 candidates, so they can actually recruit anybody.
Yeah, and actually, so the water and wastewater has the potential of dealing with 2 provisionals. The purchasing agent is resolving a provisional, the civilian dispatcher is resolving a provisional. So we have the potential of 4 provisionals going away as of tomorrow. Yeah, so.
We'll really put that 31% in shape.
That's right.
Okay. Exam status, just the highlights.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of correspondence. There we go. All right. 4 newly ordered exams. The top 2 are for the school district. The middle 2, the ones that I did on the 27th are both for the library. Code enforcement inspector has been scheduled, which is fantastic because I have been advised of a potential retirement in that position effective in December, so that's handy timing. Human resource specialist I highlighted because it has been scheduled, and I'm not sure why it didn't come across on this report, but it is scheduled for October 21st. That is the entry level position to the to the chain of titles, to the line of succession that goes from that position to my position to Joe's position. And then you will see that the Director of Public Works, which was ordered in 2021, has been scheduled for April of 2024. So our provisional in that title was very relieved to know that his test has been scheduled.
How long have they been provisional?
Roughly 30 days before that test was ordered, because I did check and we were in compliance and got that test ordered within what is appropriate for for statute. So yeah, it was September of 2021 that they were hired.
And this is Chris?
Yeah.
Well, good. So they won't retire before the test is taken,
No,
You don't think so?
we don't think so. Yeah.
Unless they win lottery or something.
That's right. You rule it out, and even that won't be a retirement. So.
Firefighter physical agility update.
All right, so, I just wanted to let everybody know what a great job, Captain Tubia did on this entire project. The apparati that he built, for this were fantastic. They spent a lot of work on it, and just, not only that, just the care that went into the health and well-being of the candidates, the fact that we had EMTs there that took vitals after people came off the course. They were very careful to make sure that people were cleared medically before they left the site. It was done incredibly professionally, and I was very impressed with our fire department, and in particular, Captain Tubia, who was the lead on this project. And our numbers were drastically better this year than they were using the police standard that we used in previous years. I had numbers prepared. I didn't think to bring them today, but we were over 50% among people that actually attended the test and passing it, and that is significantly better than it was last year. So, and it was a tough test. I mean, I think that this is harder than the other one, but I think that it's just more fit for a firefighter, and it's more appropriate for a firefighter.
Yeah, I think it was close to 70%. If I recall.
Yeah. And like they did a practice session, and people that had participated in that practice session and got coaching from Captain Tubia and his team did remarkably better than the people that didn't avail themselves of that practice sessions. And the people that failed the first time and came back for a retest, which, you know, usually you don't see success in retests, but they got good advice from Captain Tubia's team, and they were able to come back and pass the test with a second attempt. So I just wanted to make sure that they were recognized for not only the chief coming up with this and selling it to us, but then Captain Tubia being able to execute it. So
They'll be able to use that statistic recruiting for next year.
yeah, and
They'll be able to say, the practice worked, please come to practice.
yeah, and beyond the recruiting aspect of it, it turned into a wonderful team building thing for the fire department. I mean, they're doing like contests where it's crew versus crew using the apparatus and stuff like that, and building some really healthy, you know, competition among everybody, which is really pushing everybody to be in better shape and to gauge their own fitness levels, and so overall I think they did a wonderful job.
It's good to know, particularly, I was skeptical 2 years ago, whatever, for the liability issues, but this sounds really good. I find it hard to believe that they couldn't pass the 3, but they can pass, but it sounds like much harder.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think some of the candidates probably could have passed the other one as well. I think the way this is structured too, there was some more intense exercises at the beginning. Some in the middle was a little relatively less intense. That gave a little chance of recovery. And then again, ending with some of the more intense exercises, challenging ones that required, like Dave mentioned, there's at least 2 events that really, like, technique would make a big difference. I mean, you could, if you were strong enough and had enough endurance, you could really muscle through it, but technique would really make a difference. And they were small technique changes that, like Dave said, the Captain Tubia or some of the other firefighters were able to share. So.
Yeah. And like, there was no plan to have a rehab station at the end for these candidates until our own firefighters started running through this and realized, oh my gosh, this is hard. And so they put that together within 48 hours and put together waivers and put together a plan and cleaned out a room, and they pulled that off on almost no notice. So it was great recognition to understand that we need it, but then to be able to actually execute that safety mechanism as well. Having an ambulance on site was, we didn't need it, but it was there in case we did.
And an update from Director Timmy on the CSI.
Yeah, so that completed. I went to the last session that was in person in Albany. Unfortunately, due to prior travel plans, I was unable to make the very last session, which was a roundtable session, then the following morning. But it was a great experience. I think I learned a lot. I know I've said it before, but it's helped a lot. Dave and I we have a lot of conversations on unique situations or things that come up, and I know it'll continue to help into the future. So I'm thankful again to Dave for writing a letter that recommended me to be able to attend. I was grateful to be accepted, and hopefully we move onward from here.
Congratulations on completing it.
Thank you.
Is that what the motion is about?
Yeah, you want to go to that one next?
Oh, we could.
Yeah, because it wasn't on the original agenda, but I did send it the next day. I want to, I think everybody has a printed copy. Now that Joe's completed, civil service school, and it's good timing because I am out for vacation for the next 2.5 weeks, starting after Friday. So we had never really had like an acting commissioner before until 2020, when the commission secretary at the time was planning took a leave of absence, and so I was appointed as a temporary commission secretary, and then upon Katie's return, we decided to leave me in that role. Because it was extremely helpful for her to be able to delegate work to a second person, not only just for workflow purposes, but like if she had a perceived conflict, that she could pass off work to me to avoid the perception of a conflict. Being able to do something very simple like approve an application if she was out sick proved very valuable, to have somebody that has the authority to be able to do something simple like approve approve an application. And while I am gone, we are going to be ending our police recruiting cycle. So it's going to be very important to have somebody that can approve applications as hopefully they start rolling in over the last 2 weeks of recruitment. And to be able to have the authority to also to report the counts to the commission, to the state commission, to get those tests so they can be here in time for our police exams. So that is the reason. Got a little bit of the history of why there was that arrangement between Katie and I, and why I am very interested in continuing to have 2 people that are authorized to act on behalf of the commission to move day-to-day business forward. So this motion that I wrote is the exact motion that Katie had written for me. I just changed the word acting, temporary to acting. But all the other verbiage in it, obviously the date has changed. It is the same as that motion that appointed me into that role back in January of 2020.
And it sounds like the 2 of you are on board with this.
Yeah, like Dave said, I think it helps, provides the authority for some of those functions to continue should Dave be absent. It gives us some different flexibility that could be helpful at times. I don't, it may not be something that needs to be utilized frequently. Except for maybe the next couple of weeks, but outside of that, it's more about just kind of continuity of service.
I think it's even more important to do it in this case than it was in Katie's case, because Joe is the director, and that the director deserves to have that authority to be able to make these decisions in addition to the secretary as well. So, yeah, I think it's even more important this time than it was back in 2020.
Great. Do I hear a motion to accept the motion?
You guys have it to read it officially?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Okay.
Second.
Okay, great.
Congratulations.
All in favor? Yay. Okay, great, thank you.
Congratulations, Joe, on your appointment.
Thank you.
Okay.
other new business?
All right.
Where are we on exam fees? I remember this
So
discussion.
we had a little bit of a discussion about this, last month, but let's put everything on the record here. So the governor's office issued, a press release regarding changes to modernizing state workforce and government operations. This occurred back in May of 2023. And one of the paragraphs in that reads specifically that the state is removing civil service exam fees. Civil service exam fees can serve as a substantial barrier to entering public service, particularly to candidates from traditionally marginalized communities. While fee waivers currently exist for veterans as well as individuals that are unemployed or receiving public assistance, the majority of test takers must pay to take an exam. The budget will support the waiving of exam fees beginning in July 2023 and ending in December 2025 to remove this barrier for entry for individuals taking state civil service exams. So what this did is, and the law that I referenced, the change to the law in addition to this, everybody now taking state civil service exams, so exams that they are taking specifically to get a job for the state, there are no longer fees for. And the governor has specifically cited her reason for doing so, due to the fact that they can act as a barrier to public service, particularly for candidates from traditionally marginalized communities. I'm not sure that I agree with that statement, but I think that, so we accept waivers. We accept fee waivers for anybody on public assistance. And we take people for their word on that. I don't check. Somebody takes the effort to fill out an exam waiver and they're gonna give it to me. I'm not gonna embarrass them and check. I want candidates. So I'm not sure that it is a barrier, but the state has done this. The state has stated that it is a barrier. Many local agencies across our region are or have waived fees, taking the lead from the governor. And so I want to present this conversation to our commission, and talk about whether it's something that we want to also follow in this lead and recommend to the Common Council that we waive fees for our local civil service applications.
So, and that's right, it's only waiver for state positions, but then to follow suit for municipal positions?
Yes. And to be clear, the state will continue charging us to hold their exams. So because we are saying that we are waiving fees and that we will no longer be collecting fees, we will still be charged by the state to hold those exams. The only fees that they are waiving are application fees from the candidates.
Do we waive them for our local? We have the ability to do it?
You have the ability to recommend to the Common Council to waive them. Yes. I have.
I'd be in favor of leaving it as it is.
I have discussed this with Finance Director Lee about an impact that it would have. And one of the ideas that she brought forth to mitigate, it's budgeted for next year $1,500 in revenue. Not a huge chunk of money that we'd be losing, but that we spread that loss across the other three agencies that we have jurisdiction over by raising their fees that they pay us for civil service administration.
Is there a queue problem with administering these exams? Or are we not getting enough people?
We are not getting enough people. We are absolutely not getting enough people. Now, is our fees the barrier? I'm not sure. I'm prepared to state that fees are a barrier, but we are definitely not getting enough. I will say that I have had 2 police candidates that have come in the last week that did not come in prepared to pay fees because they heard civil service fees are waived and they thought it applied to all civil service fees. So that is something that is going to be a continued problem as more and more people find out that the state has waived fees. They think that that means the state and all of the agencies thereof have waived fees.
Did those 2 candidates continue to test?
They both told me that they would drop off fees by the end of the week. Neither has returned as of today. But one of them,
They expressed an intention to pay it.
they expressed an intention to pay the fee, yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is there a sunset on this, or is it forever now?
This is the specific change to the law gave the authority for the state to do this until the end of 2025. So it's kind of a test balloon for the next year and a half. Two and a half, sorry.
And, excuse me, were you able to find out any of the history of when fees first started to be charged?
I did ask, but they did not know the answer, and I haven't heard back from them as far as being able to find it yet.
And we're talking budgeted $1,500. Is that really where it comes out?
I mean, we were significantly lower than that for 2022, that's for sure.
Right.
Not even, we were barely over 500. We will be significantly improved from 2022 and 2023. I don't have our year-to-date accounts, candidate counts, but simply, I mean, we had more people take our firefighter exam this year than we had take all of our exams combined the previous year. So it will be a significantly higher number this year, that's for sure, than it was in 2022. I think 1,500 is just probably a very historical number that
Yeah,
James
it's not the same every year.
Just comfortable in that.
Yeah, and variations from year to year, it's not a big number.
And we get charged by the state per test.
Yes,
So if more firefighters take the test, we send them more money.
yeah, so our fees are designed to be double what the state fees are. So we pay $12.50 to administer per applicant for a uniform test, so we charge $25 for that exam. We charge $15 for a non-uniform, test.
$25 is not huge.
Yeah.
I'm not I probably see your point of view that I don't know why $25 would be such a barrier.
Yeah, and actually, I feel very, very much in favor of Governor Hochul and Commissioner Hoag's plan moving forward to ending paper and pencil test sites and moving to the computerized test sites. But to me, that is going to be a greater barrier to marginalized communities than test fees, because they're gonna have to get somehow, like if it's somebody that's trying to take a test to work at Oneonta State, that's a state civil service job, they're gonna have to go to Binghamton or Albany to take that test, wherever they are ends up being a state test site. So there's certainly not, I can't imagine Oneonta's on their radar for one of those 12. I could be wrong. Maybe, who knows? Yeah, we can talk about building our own someday, but, so the first factor that I think about, and I shared this with Keith, is a little story going back a few years, that we had a litigation situation, back in around 2020, where we were sued by a police candidate because we denied his application because per state law, he was too old to take the police test. All right, what's this have to do with fees? Well, here's what it has to do with fees in my mind. The New York State Division of Human Rights served us with that lawsuit for upholding the state's laws. We had to fight that lawsuit. Our lawyers had to go and defend it, and it was covered by liability insurance, but still there was an expense bared by the city for upholding the state's laws. So what happens when somebody comes and says, you are marginalizing you are creating a barrier against traditionally marginalized communities, and we're gonna sue you because you have fees? Could that happen? And what's our defense when there's a press release from the governor's office saying that fees are a substantial barrier to entering public service to marginalized communities?
So why don't we just charge what the state charges? And that would cut them in half.
Yeah, we still have to cut a check to the state for these tests.
Yeah, we
We
do.
would have no revenue to match against that expense.
And then we're still going through the actual labor of taking checks from our, and having to do those and send them up to the city and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, I know the state loves talking about, these demographics and things,
Yeah.
but then the cost of it is still on us.
Yeah, it is.
This happens in the schools everywhere, where
Yeah.
they pass these really fun press releases, and then we have to pay a bill,
Right,
which is not in the press release.
yeah.
So for those reasons, I'm not in favor of waiving these fees, because we still have to cut a check to them. Maybe we can reduce them, like Russ was saying, so that we're balanced. But we shouldn't necessarily have to, pay for what the state is promising people across the state.
Just to clarify, as far as the fees, and just for information, I think part of the reason it's doubled is that because Dave mentioned when we process stuff,
Yeah.
that helps cover some of those costs. If we charge just what the state charges, which is absolutely an option, we would still be doing the processing, but not. So the idea was, part of the thinking in talking to other municipalities is that by waiving them, they're eliminating that function of work from whatever office may process it.
Still gotta process and pay the state.
If we keep fees, absolutely, yes.
Yes, if,
State still wants their money.
Yep.
but those fees are done typically at the end of the year, right, with the annual billing?
Yes, that is part of our annual report process.
So that would be part of the annual report process, which would still happen, you're correct, and if the fees are completely waived, we would just be paying, that would be coming out of our funds
As
versus.
opposed to collecting every check and depositing, maybe not a huge amount of work, but it is.
Yeah, it's not a huge-
That work would go away if we had no fees.
And it's gonna become more and more difficult when more and more people are coming in expecting fees to be waived because they're not reading our exam announcement, and the fact that we can't take cash and we can't take credit cards, and then we have to send them to City Hall, to make that type of a payment, or just tell them to go get a check or money order and bring it back.
Sorry.
Yeah, so, I've had this conversation with some of our larger department heads too, that are having recruitment difficulties. And specifically, the fire chief shared concerns that if we don't waive fees, and a lot of other agencies are, that we are going to be at a competitive disadvantage, from a recruitment standpoint. Are people just gonna say, well, I'm gonna skip over Oneonta, I'm gonna apply, to be a firefighter in Albany, I'm gonna fight, Schoharie County, Broome County, I'm just gonna skip over Oneonta, ignore it because I don't wanna have to deal with fees, so I'm only gonna, cross-file with the ones where it's an easier process. I don't know if that holds any water or not, but it is something that did come from one of our department heads that has a significant recruiting difficulty historically, although this year was good, that
So what,
Yeah, that's a potential problem that doesn't exist yet,
doesn't, right?
so.
another thing when this topic comes up, if you talk with other municipalities or other people that may be familiar with this, is the idea that if you waive fees, the question then becomes, are you creating more applicants or are you creating more hires? The difference being, if you're waiving fees, it may become much easier to cross-file. You may get more applicants for exams, but does that really translate into you filling the positions that you need to fill? And I think it's now there were some municipalities that waived fees during the pandemic because of the pandemic, and then because of some of this, they're continuing, to waive fees based on what the state's done. But it's still, you know, pretty early to be able to determine that, but I think in the conference we went to, there were some people who shared that they felt like, yeah, it can create more applicants, but it's not really translating into filling the positions that they need to fill. Because you may have people with no fee that apply, it becomes much easier not to show up, or they're not really that interested, or they are blanketing a number of municipalities through cost filing, and then they're not, you know, but realistically, they're not. It's not something that they would really take, so.
Yeah, they would still waive fees. You know, they fill out a waiver form, you're, like you said, you're not gonna push them in a corner, not gonna accept it. So, if someone asks for a waiver, there's still that ability to process.
Yeah, I mean, now, if they're applying for a job that involves a background test, and we discover that they falsified that statement, that's gonna be the disqualifying event, but so be it. I mean, yeah, but I'm not gonna bar them from taking the test, you know, and chances are, if it's a, you know, typical clerical type job, it's never gonna come up. Police, fire, finance type position, where we're gonna do a background check, we're gonna know if they falsified that, yeah, eventually, so.
At this point, it sounds like it's a headache collecting the fees. And I'm somewhat persuaded, I don't wanna be, bullied by the prospect of, being sued, but I think it's not out of the realm of possibility. So I would, at this point, say, waive the fees until 2025, end of 2025, but,
One other thing.
I think I might be in the minority.
And perhaps Carrie can chime in on this. If we are actively searching, one of my stated goals for this year was to have a system in place for starting in 2024 to take electronic applications. If we were to remove the requirement for those applications to have a fee attached, it would certainly simplify that goal. And I don't think that that's a reason either. I don't think that, but it's, to me, yeah, I think we can come up with something that's gonna allow us to collect fees through some sort of system, but it might need to be a more advanced system, something that we're paying for, as opposed to, if we're not collecting fees, maybe it's something we could build right into our existing website rather than needing a secondary service to help us with it. But again, it's just another factor.
Do we have to do it for 2.5 years like the state?
No, not necessarily. We could just do it for a shorter period.
A year to see if anything that you believe actually it's simplified,
Yep.
we got more applicants, or
Yeah, we could gather information, we could look at things like, does our no-show rate increase noticeably, what it looks like in terms of cross-filing. I would say, if you wanted to go less, I would just ask maybe through the end of 24, so not like July to July, like we can start now, or we could start January 1st. We do have some exams that will be happening this year, so it's something that we could say, okay, let's start now, go through the end of 24, sometime before the end of 24, we'd be revisiting it to determine if it's something we want to continue with or not.
Do we have to pay the state for no-shows?
Yes.
I think once we order the tests and we have the counts in.
Yeah, it's approved applicants is what we pay for. Yeah, approved applicants. So, and our no-shows might go up.
I mean, we do get some now.
Yeah.
It's not a terrible problem. I wouldn't say it's significant right now.
I think from an administrative standpoint, strictly talking administrative and not talking about the technology side of it, I think that eliminating fees and having an increased amount of applicants would be a wash from a workload standpoint. Having an increased amount of applicants, is that actually going to translate to more hires? I don't have a strong opinion either way on that. I almost want to lean towards no. But so from a workplace standpoint, I don't think there's a huge difference between fees and not fees, because our applicant count will certainly go up, and that means more work. To me, the more intriguing part of it is being able to ease into the technology side of it, and maybe being able to get online applications, which would make our jobs more accessible to people. not having to come down to the park between the hours of 8 to 4 or put something in, you know, a stamp on an envelope and stick it in the mail. Some kids might not even know how to do that these days. So, yeah.
Well, I could see that being, you know, if you had to have a secure pay service, that could complicate that a little. But, you know, I kind of like the through 2024, collect the data, see if anything really has bumped up, although there are so many other, you know, factors that could suppress it or jump it. You know, that's not necessarily going to. But, so we budget $1,500 in revenue. What do we budget for the expense? $750?
Yeah, I'm sure that's actually does it. It's half the cost, so yeah. And like I said,
What do we budget for saving administrative?
you know, and like Ginny shared with me, I asked her the process to raise fees to the other agencies, the school district, and she said, I don't know. They haven't been done since I started working here. As we all know, Ginny started working here in 1988, so they may be overdue for a little bit of a fee hike anyway.
Haven't increased since '88.
At least that's according to her recollection. It's not like she dug into it, but she said that I don't think I've never seen it happen.
So we're charging the school district and the library.
Yeah, I believe. Do you know the
Housing
numbers?
authority?
I don't know them off the top of my head.
They are small numbers. So if we were to increase them, so let's say, so we're losing $1,500 in revenue. You know, if we were to say 500 of that is on us, how about $500 on the school district and $2,500 on each of the other?
50.
You know, 250. Yeah, yes, exactly. 250 on each of the small ones. You know, the library and the housing authority. You know, that becomes a wash for us. And like I said, if they really haven't had a fee raise since 1988,
And their fees are just a set amount. That
Yeah.
We don't charge them per test like the
No.
state charges us.
I'm fairly certain the schools is 1,500, and I'm just going off memory here, and the smaller ones pay 500 a year. You know, I think it's somewhere in that neighborhood, but I can double check. It's not a significant, certainly not significant compared to the amount of work I put in, and then our office puts in support of those three agencies.
And is that our recommendation or decision to raise those fees?
So
Or is that a finance committee?
when I first started looking at this, the first thing that Joe and I looked at was the adopted fee schedule for the city, and civil service fees aren't on there. So we were kind of thinking it's probably our decision. But then when the state actually brought us the actual law that they had changed, the law actually stated that it gave authority to waive fees to the commission with approval of the appropriate governing body, which for us would be common council. So yes, if you guys make this recommendation to waive fees until 2024, we already tentatively have it on the agenda to go to finance tomorrow. And then if they wish to move it forward, it would go to council on the 4th, and I will have it ready to announce on the 5th.
That's to waive the test fees. What about to raise the fees to the three?
That would be part of the budgetary process.
Okay.
So they're
Not
working on the
really
budget.
include us at all.
Right, yeah. But that was Ginny's thought process, is if this is something that the commission is interested in doing, that would be her preference to see us recoup that money, is to have the other agencies take a bite of the apple as well. Which I thought was fair.
Well, I know what my school taxes are.
Yeah.
An extra $500 is probably not a huge deal.
But that
Not
would-
to you, I mean, that would
be
dispersed over the,
Well,
The
I'll,
motion is just on the applicant, not necessarily the agency. That's
correct. The only thing, I
it
mean,
kind of spilled over into that. But
Right, yeah.
The motion's really about whether or not to waive the fees.
what I'm asking for the commission to consider today is whether they want to eliminate fees to applicants. Yes. Yes.
Well, then I'll move that we, from July first or
I would say,
August first.
a recommendation to the council that fees be, if you wanna put a date to it, or just upon
I think the
their
remainder of
approval.
twenty-three and the,
Yeah.
the entirety of twenty-four.
With December 31st, 2024 being the recommended test period ending. Now, if there's a second, we can discuss it. Is there a second?
I'll second that. I mean, I'd like to know though, if, what your concerns or what you think the benefits are, if they're, if they actually, right now they're more like hypothetical, you think it's gonna happen, but,
And,
if we wanna try it, then
to me, that's where I'm torn.
We're bending over backwards because it was stated in the local press release there, and her declaration that this is a barrier, and it's not necessarily proven in our dealings.
I would,
And we still have a cost, and we still have an overhead cost,
Yeah.
so it seems unreasonable to not charge fees. If the state were waiving their fees to us, fine, but we still got to write them a check, and, so yes, it is confusing, the way they're doing it, but
it's in paper, oh, we're gonna waive the fees, but then we have to,
fine print.
charge, and they're gonna charge us for them, though.
Yeah.
Charge the city still.
I wish that they had put in that press release. We're still gonna charge the municipalities, of
That's
course,
right.
it's not gonna write that, but, so I think we still have to balance our expenses revenue on that one, and waiving doesn't balance it.
and if the goal here is to create more people taking tests, like I said, I don't know that it's going to or not. I really, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because everybody's having a hard time finding work. Just everybody I talk to, from contractors to restaurants to, everybody's having trouble. I don't know if it's just the city, the fee or not.
And that's part of the struggles that we have, is that we have this very convoluted, even for non-competitive positions. Our hiring process is much more convoluted than in the private sector. I mean, Stewart's does on-demand, interviews. You can walk in there, if the manager's there, they'll interview and you could be working the next day. We can't do that. We have a legislative process. We have, are fees just another factor? I don't know. I think that the barrier is the fact that you can't start working tomorrow if you apply for us. That's a barrier. Somebody who needs to put food on the table quickly. Who's out of work.
We're focused on the thing that's really not the root problem.
So we have a motion and a second, but
What does Robert say about somebody who seconds?
he votes against.
Vote against?
Yeah, still vote.
I want to open it for discussion.
Yeah, exactly. I don't.
I think that's,
Yeah.
I think that's fair, so.
It's.
Well,
it's a tough one.
you got my vote on the no, and I think you got the yes.
No pressure.
What is there, Jalen?
I mean, Joe, do you have any other discussion points that?
I mean, I'd like to, in some ways, the financial piece is something more for council to consider necessarily than this commission. Not that I'm not telling you shouldn't, but, that's something that they would weigh. I think the goal here is really the underlying issues of whether to waive or not being, is it a barrier to certain groups? Is it something that's beneficial? I think it's difficult because, in my opinion, yes, if we waive all the fees, then we don't have to do the processing of the checks, but that work is not terribly significant or difficult, but it's a piece of it. If we waive the fees, we may get more applicants. That's great, but will it actually produce more, people being actually hired? We don't know, so that's a piece of it, but, it's a small piece. The amount of fees that we pay to the state for, that we would still have to pay the state even if we waive the fees, currently is not significant. I think, we've been trying through recruiting efforts to increase recruitment, some successes, small successes, some not successes yet, but we've been looking at trying different things. In a year and a half from now, I would love to say that, oh, we now can recruit enough people and have enough applicants where we really do have, the money issue is a much, the number's larger, so it's a bigger consideration. I don't know if we'll get there or not, because the environment currently is that recruitment for civil service is challenging, as Dave has kind of outlined. So there's a lot, I don't know if there's one large issue they can easily point to and say, oh, well, because of this, it makes sense to waive it, or because of this, it makes sense not to. It's just a kind of an amalgam of all the small pieces to the puzzle.
And although I think that I did not like the way that this was phrased, from an overall strategy standpoint, whoever deserves credit for it, whether it's Hochul, whether it's Commissioner Hoag's, I think their overall strategy and foresight for civil service is moving things in a positive direction. The things that we've seen come across that are short-term answers have been helpful to certain agencies. The HELP program, the statewide police exam, kind of as a backup to local agencies. The idea of moving away from paper and pencil, I think overall those are really good ideas, and they're setting civil service on a good path. So I don't want to, to make it feel like I'm anti-administration when it comes to what they're doing with civil service. But this one statement, I don't agree with. Yeah.
So if we were to pass this, it's up to me, I guess, does it go to the finance committee or the council?
It goes to
Finance first, then
Finance first.
Finance committee, and they're gonna toss it around. It's not necessarily they could say no.
Yeah. Absolutely, they can.
I think too, what may be helpful is if there is a vote to recommend, what the reason for the recommendation may be. That may be helpful for the council members in terms of their discussion. I don't know, but so if it is to gather data for the next year and a half ish, to say that okay, this is the impact or this is not the impact. Of course, it may also, you could argue, it's harder to remove fees and then reinstitute them. Is it better to keep them in place and have some other discussion or see what happens in other places before we actually remove them? But it may be helpful to have an idea of is it just for data gathering? Is it to remove any possible barriers? The thing about barriers is if people aren't applying now because of fees, we don't know what for our municipality, right? In some municipalities, it may be a larger issue. Maybe it's a large issue in ours and we're not aware because they're not applying. We wouldn't know.
Either of you go to the finance committee so they can discuss why we did one way or the other?
Joe attends most of them. I could certainly make myself available tomorrow if you asked me to go. I could certainly be there.
No, I'm planning to be there tomorrow. Yep, so we can.
Certainly,
It's
it's an open public meeting.
I'm on
so.
finance committee and I hear we're just waiving the fees. Why was everything, why was this a consideration? I think they need to hear everything we've been talking about. So.
We could advise them to watch the tape.
Sorry, Dan, I'm gonna move it to the finance committee. And I was the first one against it, but.
Yeah, that's fine. We can have the conversation there, and if you want, we can convey that it was a difficult decision for the commission for the various
I
reasons.
understand some of your factors, but it's not. We're not talking $150,000. We're talking $1,500. So this year it wasn't that much, but it's kind of a moving target. But it also puts us in a spot when the state makes an announcement like this, and I don't know if anybody would ever do anything legally. I guess it's a possibility, but.
And I think, there's been some communication on an email list we're on, and there are both a number of municipalities that are waiving the fees and a number of municipalities that are not. And I would say generally speaking, more are waiving them than not, but it's not like 80 to 20,
No,
it's not like that. It might be more like 60-40
Yeah.
or something, so.
And I should have brought that list. I didn't think about it. There was one that was compiled by Saratoga County. They've been compiling all the answers, and you know, our most immediate competition, if it is if competition is a factor to anybody, is, you know, Otsego County, Delaware County, Shenango County. That's, so I can, you know, that's something I can make sure that finance has tomorrow, is
So
that
what they do?
information. I don't remember, I've seen the list, but I can't remember specifically those three, what they did. I wanna say that I thought Otsego County was one of the ones that was waiving. I wonder if part of that is because they use the same web service they are, and they've suddenly gone to online applications. But, I don't know.
See if finance this tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. So, I appreciate, I think that was a really good conversation. I appreciate everybody's feedback and input, and like I said, I'm conflicted on it, so.
Yeah, so was I, if we voted again.
So the motion is basically to recommend to the finance committee consider waiving the fees.
Yes.
Through the end of next year.
For next year.
Through 2024.
Yep.
Well, I would still vote yes for that.
No,
No.
And yes.
Good luck with the finance committee. I mean, this is, I don't think the data, even if in a year, we won't know.
Yeah.
There are too many other factors for why people.
And if we see a push, because we, you know, who knows if it's because if I do, am able to move forward with an electronic application process, is that the cause that we see an increase in applications, or is it because we got rid of fees? There's gonna be lots of different factors that it'll make it very hard to isolate one reason, but.
well, I don't feel this is a major component of the problem.
The city doesn't take any fees electronically at this point, do they?
Water bills, I believe.
Water bills, permit payments, other
Really?
finance transactions. Yep.
I don't have to walk down here to pay my water bill.
I mean, it's always lovely to see you, so.
Yeah, we'll see.
She wants me to stay home.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I pulled it up and maybe I was going the other way, cause it looks like there's, if I'm counting right, I think it's 10 on the list that I'm seeing, 10 waiving, 13 not waiving.
Right.
Okay. So, shall we move on, Commissioner? Chair, sorry.
Sure. Summary of the annual report.
All right, we did, I covered everything that we needed to cover in that one when I skipped ahead in correspondence. So, the provisional rate is the big thing, but I know, Keith had wanted to discuss, so I think we're good there.
And we might get 4 off of that list, so that's great.
Yeah, yep, that's right, so,
All right, these job specs,
okay.
there's a lot of red ink.
There's a lot of red ink on some of these. So some of these are pretty old job specs. Which is the first one? The first one is laboratory technician, okay. So laboratory technician, so we currently have I think everybody here is aware that, Chief Water Treatment Plant Operator, Stan Schaefer, who has been here since '77, I believe, and has been chief since '84, retired at the end of the year, and then came back as of January 2nd on a part-time basis.
You took a day off?
He took a day off for his retirement, yeah.
Whoa.
So, well, 2 days, but one of them was a holiday. So, yeah.
After that.
So, you know, and it's because of his sense of duty, and he's put so many years into this. And there's, I believe there were only 3 people in all of Otsego County that actually hold the license required to do that job, and he was one of them. The other one of the other 2 has sadly passed away recently. So, you know, we are bringing up someone. We have someone that is currently in charge of the lab. They are functioning under the title Senior Water Treatment Plant Operator. That is the person that we have identified as part of our succession plan that will be the next chief. Once that position is vacated, we want to be able to use the title laboratory technician, which is a title that was last used maybe 2018, 2019, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then we had people doing that from a higher level title. So once the senior operator moves up to chief operator, we're gonna wanna fill his vacancy using this laboratory technician job spec. And so Stan and I sat down and he did a lot of modernizing for it. And then you'll see, obviously, we did broaden the minimum qualifications as we have been doing for so many jobs. Where for this is an entry-level position, it's a direct line promotion from this to laboratory director. So he felt it was more appropriate to get somebody that has a demonstrated aptitude of science rather than somebody that actually has water laboratory experience. So that's the reason for broadening the spec. Do you have any questions on this one?
Only thing I would change, you gotta maybe put an or between A and C, because that's what how it reads, right?
Yeah.
Not just agree, because it's not the order. So it's almost like it has all three. And, because the first line.
Yeah, it's supposed to, there's,
High school and possession, blah, blah, or blah, blah.
Yep.
Possession, the A, B, C. Usually those things are,
you're right.
you have an or at the end of the
Perfect, thank you so much. All right, so the A. Okay, perfect.
Why are there semicolons at the end of each one of these?
That is the preferred style that the state has dictated, except for the last one is supposed to be a period.
Okay,
So,
well,
did I miss one?
the second,
Oh, the second
one
bullet.
only has period.
Okay.
Sorry.
We're all
Thank you so
looking at
much.
the post now.
No, that's
Read
good.
Commas, ors,
All right, can we?
Should I keep going on all of them and then you guys can?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so, clerk's part-time, that we do have, this is a, title that is currently in use not only by the city, but by the school district and the library, and I did, include, Reggie McGinnis at the high school and Tina Winstead at the library, to go over this with me, and, I got a lot of input from them on modernizing this job spec. We are looking to make a hire in this job title in the central garage, which is budgeted for this year, which is why this one has come up for review.
It was 50 years ago.
Yeah, how about that? It's not a lot of red for a 50-year-old job spec, is it?
I was a senior in high school.
I was not.
You were born?
Same. Sorry, so the next one is, so these next two, this is coming from the school district. So a little history on the position that's about to be vacated there. We have a person that is the support, the clerical support for their director of curriculum and instruction. And that person is holding the job school secretary. That was the school secretary at Center Street School. And to avoid a layoff, when Center Street School closed, they moved them into this position and let them keep the title school secretary, which we felt like wasn't the most ideal job classification, but it was not out of title by any stretch. So they have requested that we look at the job. I talked extensively to Reggie McGinnis about this. We talked about the title administrative specialist, which is used by us. And they felt like they wanted something that was school specific and had very specific school stuff in here. So we had these two job specs that were already on our books. Administrative assistant and administrative secretary that were very similar, and it seemed like they are direct line succession from one to the other, with the secretary being the higher level title. So I did look at both of these titles, and I renamed the second one to make it more clear that it is a direct line from one to the other, senior administrative assistant. Upon reviewing the classification, the school district has agreed that senior administrative assistant is, out of these two, the more appropriate classification, but they wanted to make sure that they had, in case there wasn't anybody with these qualifications that availed themselves, they wanted to be able to hire also potentially in the lower title and develop that person into the higher title. So that was kind of our mindset between doing, instead of combining the two into one, keeping them separate, but putting them in line, direct line of succession, so. Any feedback on this one, on these two, as you
The
said?
minimum qualifications are in black, but.
Oh, sorry.
They should have been.
Yeah, those are all in blue, yep. Yep,
They're not in blue.
they should be in blue, yes, I'll circle them in blue.
So who's going to answer the phone?
What phone?
Well, there's that.
I thought that it was kind of interesting, and I know it was but this is a very old job spec, but the highest and the most critical function of the administrative assistant was answering the phone. And that it took 6 years of experience to be able to answer the phone. I thought that might have been a little excessive, but, I mean, it's an old job spec, so 22 years since the last time anybody looked at this job spec.
It says answer the phone.
That's right.
It doesn't say it nicely, it's like,
What?
In 73, there might have been party lines.
That's right, yeah. We've been working on a switchboard.
I'll take it, we hit the party. Pick up the phones when we stop.
All right. So here we have a motion to accept.
we'll move.
Second.
Okay. Okay.
Motion to go into executive session.
Okay. And this will be very quick.
Second. Right, are you watching that? Second.
To discuss the
This is required to discuss employment of a specific person, and we have two in the same category that we